Hello everyone, welcome to Voting Trend. My name is Dave. Today is September 10th, the debate day. We'll see how the debate ends up playing out in a few days in the polls. I don't think that it's going to have much because we have so few undecided voters, and I find that debates are basically cheerleading sessions, to be honest. I mean, rarely do we see debates actually have a huge impact. And I mean, in 1960 it had a small impact, helping JFK out, but the last time I would say a debate really had a really strong impact was probably 1988, and that was Bernard Shaw asking Michael Dukakis a question that absolutely sank him. So unless there's some sort of debate question that's going to sink one of the two candidates today, I don't think that we're going to see a lot of difference. But it'll be interesting to see the character of how they are. But, you know, who knows? Maybe we'll see a bump. But besides that, we have a lot of polling today. We have polling coming out of North Carolina, 2 polls that we're going to look at. We have a poll coming out of Georgia from Quinnipiac that actually shows Donald Trump ahead, but within the margin of error. And we have a big village poll that I want to talk about something that I mentioned in yesterday's video and in a few videos before that, and that is how if somebody is a likely voter, they're more likely to be Kamala Harris supporters than those who are just registered voters or adults. And that poll that they have gives a really good breakdown on how that progression happens. So at the end, toward the end of this video, we will talk about that. But first, we are going to go ahead and look at the North Carolina poll. So we had Survey USA do one, and we had Quinnipiac do one. Both look real good for Kamala Harris. So let's go ahead and dive into those. So if you look at our first one that we have here from Survey USA, we have Kamala Harris up 49-46, a 3-point lead. I think the margin of error is like right at 3, so she's almost right outside of it. The male number is a little bit close for Kamala Harris. That should be let's see, that's a 3-point gap. But then if you look at the exit poll from 2020, you see that the gender gap is much larger. So this gender gap might be a little close, but if we look at this one, 53-46, okay, this one seems a little bit more representative of what it is. So this might be giving Kamala Harris a little bit of a favor when it comes to male voters. If we look at age distribution, we'll look at these. These actually look okay. Now, this 50-64 number is going 2% for Kamala Harris, which actually might not necessarily be off, because you have to realize if we look at our exit poll from 4 years ago, a number of these, let me go down here, number of these 40-49 are now all of a sudden going to be in that other group. What group did we say? 50-64. So a lot of these people who are 46-49, they're now going to be in this group, and they're going to tilt that group a little bit. And then a lot of the people who are 62-64 are now going to be in the 65 and older group. So it's going to tilt that a little bit. So that is aligned with what we see. And then the 65 older, 51-46. So that seems absolutely fine. The white vote, 57-37. If we look at the exit poll, we can see that 66% of white voters supported Donald Trump. So this is a little bit favoring Kamala Harris, but it's 37%-33. So that's favoring Kamala Harris a lot. That might be skewing the poll quite a bit. So 86-12 with black voters. Black voters see here, it skews a little bit towards Donald Trump. That could be a balancing effect, because you are talking about 23% of the electorate being black. So some of these numbers aren't necessarily the best. Now, this is an interesting thing. So if we look at people who are certain voters, 46-49, this is why I wanted to mention in with the big village poll. And then all of a sudden, if you see probable voters, that comes down by 1%. This is the thing with Donald Trump's support. It seems like a lot of his support is buoyed either by people who haven't voted in the past or people who are less likely to vote. So the more and more likely somebody is to vote, the more and more likely the poll is going to favor Kamala Harris. So this, even though it's just a small little difference, this shows that tiny bit of a shift. Distribution seems about right as far as party affiliation and party registration. Now, interesting. So we got party registration and affiliation. So with these numbers, it would be nice if we had the actual data points, because with these numbers, we can see how many people identify with the party that they are registered as. But if you see 91 to 93.5, most people who are registered Republican identify as Republican. It's almost smack dab accurate for Democrats. And when it comes to independents, it sees that the independents, those registered as independents, are basically the same. So that looks good. Ideology, okay? I've said the whole entire time, 3 keys for Kamala Harris: solidified youth vote, solidified moderate vote, solidified Hispanic vote. The Hispanic vote's not going to matter as much here. This is going to be more a black turnout vote. But when it comes to solidifying that moderate vote, there you go, 51%. And this is more important in a state like Georgia, North Carolina. Maybe we start putting Florida into there. I still say the numbers as far as registration aren't there in Florida. But if we look at this number, 51%, I think that number needs to be a tad bit higher, because we don't have the raw numbers here, but more people in North Carolina are going to identify as very conservative and conservative. Now, I will say this is a big number, if true. Kamala Harris has taken 22% of conservative voters, and Donald Trump's only taken 3% of liberal voters while losing the moderate. These are going to be the people who make the difference right here, the conservative voters. If 1/4 of conservative voters go Kamala Harris's way, game over, done. And then we see right here, ideology aggregated. Okay, so yes, 19% of conservatives, wow. And we're starting to see some of these trends with the liberals kind of staying with Kamala Harris, but you're starting to see some conservatives drift over. I don't know if that's going to play out. If we look at North Carolina in the exit poll, if we look at ideology, conservative, we see only 9%. So that would be a significant shift away from Donald Trump in this election. So we got the 2,000 vote voting method. Now, with the possible voter suppression going on in North Carolina, and I will call it voter suppression because RFK Jr. now going to court now, trying to get his name off the ballot, and the counties having to reprint the ballots and everything, that does nothing but stall votes coming in. Luckily, it is done a good 60 days before, or 50-some days before the election, but it is a stalling tactic nonetheless, and I call that voter suppression. So the vote by mail, you can see, is 53% to 41%. Early vote, and then election day voting. Now, that early vote number is important for Kamala Harris. She's able to keep that. That looks really good. This poll overall seems okay. The only question I do have with it are the numbers as far as gender over here. That male number for Donald Trump, to me, should be a little bit higher, which then, if that's the case, maybe makes this poll smack dab in the middle. Now, let's go ahead and look at the Quinnipiac poll that also shows Donald Trump up, or excuse me, Kamala Harris up by 3, and basically by the same percentage. Now, if we look at this percent, we see male voters are about where they are. Female voters a little bit stronger for Kamala Harris, which I think is a little bit more accurate. And this seems right. If we look at the age distribution here, see Kamala Harris 55, then we get more Republican. The only thing with this one compared to the other one showing 65 and older, Kamala Harris winning 10%. Now, this number seems a little high for Trump. This number definitely seems high for Kamala Harris, so these might just balance each other out. Nothing big. If you look at the overall white vote, 56 to 41, that's a little bit more in Kamala Harris's favor, and the black vote is a little bit more in Donald Trump's favor. So that's about that. Those can also offset themselves, especially with the large black population in North Carolina. Now, if we look in-person voting, I guess that, because it says early location, so I guess in-person voting here is going to be an election day voting. You see 58 to 37. Absentee, 68 to 30. This is why that voter suppression that's going on by RFK Jr. is so important to address, and the Democrats should be going to court like crazy regarding this, because it's going to be a big chunk of their votes. And then early locations, Democrats as well. So overall, these North Carolina polls look good. I think that there's give and take with both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. And with those being balanced out, it kind of helps Democrats. Now, I do want to look at the Georgia poll real quick, coming out of from Quinnipiac. And we see in this one, Donald Trump winning by 4%, which I believe would make it outside of the margin of error. It should be one of the only polls that we've seen Donald Trump actually winning Georgia win against Kamala Harris outside of the margin of error. Now, the distribution of party looks okay, but this independent number, and this usually happens with southern states. With southern states, those who identify as independent usually break Democratic, and we see that here. So the fact that this is 46 or 46 means that this is a lot more in favor of Donald Trump. This skews Donald Trump's way. As far as men, 56, women, now see, here we go again. This is where I think we have a real flaw. So if we look at gender, 55 to 43, that male number should be fine. 56 to 37, okay, so it has Kamala Harris down. But 52 to 43, 54 to 45. Okay, so those could be okay. Those could be okay. As a matter of fact, I'd say this male number kind of favors Trump a little bit more, or at least this number right here with Harris, because we have a lot of these undecideds and all that going this way. Okay. As far as age distribution, that looks good. That looks flipped. See, again, with this Quinnipiac poll, like we had in North Carolina, you have the 65 and older and this 35 to 49 number flipped compared to what I thought they would be. So they could just have a balancing out, especially since these aren't that far off. As far as white men, 72% for Donald Trump, white women, 64%, with white voters, 68% overall in Georgia. And I think that's going to be pretty spot on with what Georgia is. Yeah, if we look at race, 69% of white voters voted for Donald Trump in 2020. Now, if we look at the black voters, yes, that's about right. So this poll looks, I would say, okay. I think you can bring the Trump number down a little bit to bring it within the margin of error, but I think overall it's a decent poll, and unfortunately it shows, and it's likely voters, and it shows that Donald Trump is going to do a lot better. Let's see what other polls say. It's just weird that now, and I mentioned this before, and I don't remember when I mentioned it, that I'm starting to think North Carolina is the real key to the Democrats winning. And to me, North Carolina, Nevada, win those two states. Those are the two states. That's your pathway to victory. Now, I did want to talk about a big village poll that is a national poll that was released yesterday as well. Now, in this one, I really am not going to look at the top numbers. I'm not going to really look at the crosstabs relating to age or male, female, or whatever. We're going to look at the likeliness of voting. So when polls are done, you usually see polls done by, of all adults, then registered voters, then likely voters who self-identify as likely voters. And I have made the case in the last few videos that as people become more likely voters, they're more likely to vote for Kamala Harris. And this big village poll gives us exactly that. So as we can see, let's go up a little bit. Of adults, you see Kamala Harris winning by about 3, right? Or at least her percentage is 43.9. As soon as we go to registered voters, her percentage is 44.75, and then as soon as we get to likely voters, it's 49.3. Now we can see Donald Trump's numbers go up as well, but when we get to likely voters, we're all of a sudden talking about Kamala Harris getting a near majority. Now, this is something that if we look at the most recent New York Times poll that we have here with Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, as I mentioned, I think a lot of Trump's numbers are buoyed by people who are probably not going to vote, who have not voted in the past, or are just undecided, and then at the end they're just not going to vote. So if we look at Donald Trump's number here, this is a poll he's winning 48 to 47. If you go look at those, or let me go right here first. 18 to 29, 51 to 43. Remember that number, okay? So 51 to 43. Now if we go all the way to the end here, okay, we see did not vote, 49%, right? Kamala Harris did not vote 40%. So this showing of those who say they did not vote in the last election, they're breaking with Donald Trump. Now, there are only two reasons why you wouldn't be voting. The first reason would be that you weren't old enough to vote. You weren't 18 yet, so therefore you couldn't vote. And that's why I don't think most of those voters are 18, people who are younger than 18, because Donald Trump is losing those voters 51 to 43. So to me, those 49% that we just saw are more likely people who had the opportunity to vote in 2020, but just didn't vote in 2020. Because even if they were in another state, they could have said they voted in another state, and now they're voting in Georgia or wherever they live now, right? This is a national poll. So a lot of Donald Trump's numbers are buoyed by these non-voters and these just registered voters and adults. So as you see these polls change. Now, I'm going to go to the Real Clear Politics page just because, or not the Real Clear Politics page, 538 page, because I'm still, comment below. Comment below. If you've made it this far in the video, please subscribe and comment below. I'm considering getting Morning Consult's crosstabs for a friggin' ridiculous price of $150 per month. I don't want to dish out that kind of money, but there might be a lot. But I want to look at what Morning Consult has. So if we look at Georgia, they have it tied. If you look at Washington or Wisconsin, Morning Consult has Trump up, or Harris up by 3. Let's see. If you look at Morning Consult for Texas, Trump's up by 9. Pennsylvania, Harris is up by 3. Ohio, Trump up by 8. Nevada, tied. Minnesota, who cares about Minnesota? Michigan, Harris up by 46. But anyway, Minnesota, Harris up by 7. Who cares about Maryland? Now here, this is the one that's just making me go nuts. Florida, 47 to 49. Now, I've been adamant about the fact that Trump and Republicans cannot win Florida. There are possibilities that NPA voters can be just switching over to the Democratic side. That could be happening. We'll see. And then Colorado. Okay, Arizona, Morning Consult has Trump up by 2. And then the rest are Senate races. So I might get into the Morning Consult, might pay for that just so we can delve into the crosstabs, see how those are. But overall, these polls look good for Kamala Harris. They look like she's starting to solidify that support. Again, if she wins Nevada, she wins, if she goes ahead and wins Nevada, and she wins North Carolina or Georgia or Pennsylvania, game over, done. Game, set, match. I think she has a clearer path to 270. And I was going to bring it up again, but basically from the last time I did it, my electoral map has not changed. The Georgia poll doesn't give me enough. If we start seeing a trend with Georgia, then I'll throw Georgia maybe back into the Republican side. But as of right now, Georgia's starting to become a state like Nevada where it's close in the polls, but for some reason in the last few election cycles, Democrats are able to just squeak it out and push forward. So, I think that the Democrats are still in a good position to win this thing. All right, thank you all very much. Join, like, subscribe to the channel, comment down below on your thoughts about where this election is going. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.